welcome to this half hour of the apps of LindellTVs.com live coverage of the White House. What we've been covering in extensive detail, of course, which is my forte. I've been on this story since November the 3rd, 2020. And that is Chris Krebs and Cisa. He's a former director of Cisa. Take a listen to what Donald Trump had to say about him yesterday.
Christopher Krebs, the former head of CISA. This is a man who weaponized his position against free speech in the election context, in the context of COVID-19. A presidential memorandum to the one you just signed. It is he might have, and further instructs your Department of Justice, other aspects of your government, to investigate some of the malign acts that he participated in while he was still head of CISA.
This is another one. I don't know that I met him. I'm sure I met him, but I didn't know him. And he came out right after the election, which was a rigged election, a badly rigged election. We did phenomenally in that election. Look what happened to our country because of it. Open borders, millions of people coming into our country. Russia and Ukraine, that would have never happened. October 7th would have never happened.
In case you missed that huge news yesterday, like I said, that was a major story that broke shortly after I was with you at 2:30 yesterday. And it was near and dear to my heart. President Donald Trump has ordered an investigation into former CISA director Chris Krebs. Some of you may be asking, well, who exactly is this guy? Who is Chris Krebs? It's this guy.
It's completely and utterly surreal. None of these lies have been substantiated to any extent. Every single one of them has been debunked.
Chris Krebs was director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, charged with protecting the 2020 election. He called it the most secure election in American history, and days later was fired by President Trump.
How secure was the 2020 election? Let me put it this way. It was the most litigated. It was the most scrutinized. It was the most audited. This election was put through the ringer from so many different directions. There's no evidence that any machine that I'm aware of has been manipulated by a foreign power. Period.
Joining us now to talk more about that guy is our own White House correspondent, Kara Castronova. Kara, thank you so much for joining me. Look, I've been on cloud nine since this broke because I've always said that Chris Krebs was instrumental to the steal in 2020. We started to learn so much more. None of us really knew who he was or what he'd been doing in the lead up to the election. This is very interesting to me that Donald Trump has ordered an investigation into Krebs. I didn't know that was going to happen. I know that some people, some of his aides around him, some people advising him had shared our reporting with him. And now this. Tell us, he also put out some of the justifications for this executive order to the Department of Justice, correct?
Yes, and I read that executive order, and to me, it's like a Christmas present, really. And I'm sure the same way with you and a lot of others that were so canceled and, demonized after the election in 2020 when we were asking questions. But really, the executive order removes, obviously, the security clearance for Christopher Krebs and also puts into question really what he did when it came to censoring conservatives, to censoring anybody that was questioning the election, even censoring COVID and Hunter Biden's laptop, which was just so extreme in 2020, the censorship that we all experienced actually for 4 years now. So for me, this just opens up so many more doors where I can investigate. And I know you feel the same way, Admiral, trying to really get to the bottom of what Christopher Krebs did, what his involvement was when it came to that election. A lot of people say maybe he was covering up for something that he knew. People that I'm talking to. So hopefully we'll finally get to the bottom of that. I'm excited about this executive order. Besides the auto pen one, I think this might be my favorite so far.
It definitely is mine. I've been waiting for that. And I know that there are several more shoes to drop. And I feel like this is probably really getting the ball rolling. So we'll keep covering this extensively. And in just a moment, I'm going to talk with the former spokeswoman for Donald Trump, Liz Harrington, who is as well versed as any of us on the 2020 stolen election fraud in general, and particularly as Chris Krebs relates to that topic. So we'll dive a little deeper with Liz into exactly who he is, what he's been doing since the election, what he was doing in the lead up to the 2020 election. And we'll dive a little deeper into that. Now, some fascinating moments out of that cabinet meeting that happened a little bit earlier today. I was blown away by several of the statements made by the president's cabinet. Of course, we've been covering the trade issue pretty heavily, but there were some really important moments, particularly with number one, Tulsi Gabbard, and number two, RFK, right?
Yes, everybody's still talking about tariffs, the economy, and other things, but I wanted to make sure to focus on obviously Robert Kennedy Jr. I feel like his mission to make America healthy again is something that's so important to so many of us. And it's getting overshadowed, I think, a lot now in the media with everything else going on. And I was really happy to see the administration put out a clip of Kennedy and President Trump talking about getting to the bottom of autism and really refocusing on that. Because I know a lot of people were concerned with Kennedy. They were wondering if he was going to revisit the vaccines and if they were what was actually causing autism, and also the childhood epidemic for obesity. And something he said that really hit home to me and made sense was, he was speaking about measles, and I want you to take a listen to the clip, but just saying what we need to start talking about every child that has obesity, that's suffering from a childhood obesity. Yeah. Why aren't we fixating on that the same way the media is fixating on these two children that allegedly died of measles when it comes out that the second child did not die of measles? That statement was put out by Kennedy as well. So take a listen to Robert Kennedy Jr. and President Trump really talking about autism, vaccines, and the childhood obesity epidemic.
And we're trying to refocus the press. We've had 3 measles deaths in this country over 20 years. And we're trying to refocus the press to get them to pay attention to the chronic disease epidemic as you've asked us to. We have now 38% of American youth are pre-diabetic, unknown 30 years ago. Every child that becomes diabetic, there should be a headline about them. We have 100 million adults who are pre-diabetic or diabetic. And we have, we have now the autism rates have gone from now most recent numbers we think are going to be about 1 in 31, from 1 in 20, so they're going up again. From 1 in 10,000 when I was a kid. And we are going at your direction. We are going to know by September. We've launched a massive testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world. By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
So big. Think of that. So it was 1 in 10,000 children had autism, and now it's 1 in 31. Not 31,000, 31. That's a horrible statistic, isn't it? And there's got to be something artificial out there that's doing this. So you think you're going to have a pretty good idea, huh?
We will know by September.
There will be no bigger news conference than that. So that's it. If you can come up with that answer where you stop taking something, you stop eating something, or maybe it's a shot, but something's causing it. It can't be from 10,000 to. Can you imagine that, Marco? That's a big number. Thank you very much. You're doing great. Thank you, Bobby.
Wow. So President Trump's reaction to me was, really great. And, just how he said that's going to be the biggest news, and how he's actually acknowledging in front of the cabinet that it could be from a shot, it could be artificial. So continuing to actually speak on this, I was concerned myself that would be dropped. But thank God it's still at the forefront of the conversation. So, I love that clip. It actually made me emotional because I really think it's so important that we continue to ask questions when it comes to these vaccines and when it comes to childhood obesity epidemic and autism. So many children are affected. And like Kennedy said, if there was a front page article for every kid that's sick from these diseases, you probably, you can't even imagine every day there would be a headline like they are doing with these measles deaths. So that just really hit home for me.
Yeah, and the propaganda campaign and the corporate media is working on in regards to the measles. I was at dinner yesterday evening, and I could hear a table next to me, and the two ladies are having an argument about one was pro-vaccine, like jab to the hilt, and the other was saying, I don't trust them. I'm not getting, still the debate about the COVID jabs. And the justification that the other lady was using is that, oh, but the people are dying of measles. And it was so hard not to get involved and interject in that conversation. But this is a huge commitment. And for Donald Trump to say this right there and to make those statements himself, is obvious that this research is going to go forward, that it's not. And, you know, it backs up what one of my guests joined me a little later in the show, Charlene Bollinger, who is a friend of Bobby Kennedy Jr. She'd been saying, be patient, be patient. So
Thank God.
yeah. I want to get to another moment in the cabinet meeting as well, because we're going to talk about this with our next guest, also Liz Harrington, and that's what Tulsi Gabbard had to say in regards to election integrity. Let's listen.
We're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this. Election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time, and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
It was so great to hear a former Democrat actually speaking about, you know, election integrity and paper ballots. Like I said, it was a great cabinet meeting. And Tulsi, yes, the machines, and talking about that. Now she's in there and she's going to get that intelligence and hopefully get that information out to the rest of us, because obviously there's so many suspicions around these machines. And something notable she also said was within the next few days, the Robert Kennedy files will come out, as well as Dr. Martin Luther King on those assassinations, and those should be ready within the next few days. So they're really fighting for transparency over there in the intelligence community, and Tulsi Gabbard has really been, to me, she's doing a great job so far, especially if she gets us those files unredacted. I'm hoping.
Yeah. Look, and just imagine his son is sitting in that room as a member of the cabinet. What an iconic, historic moment in regards to the machines. And I know that specifically the Director of National Intelligence, Ms. Gabbard, has been briefed. I know largely what she's been briefed on in regards to these machines, and it sounds like they're going to start disseminating this to the public very soon. I've been having to sit on some information, as everybody knows who's been following my X threads. So this was a big indicator to me that there's another shoe to drop very soon. Of course, Donald Trump ordering the investigation into Chris Krebs, but also taking away the security clearance of that law firm that has been responsible for the voting machine litigations, has been behind those, and targeting specifically Mr. Mike Lindell. So such a huge 2 days of news for us here at Lindell TV. Thank you, Kara Castanova, for being there on the ground for us and making sure we get all the important information out to our audience. Thank you, Kara.
Thank you, Emma.
And speaking of Chris Krebs, I want to take you through a little backgrounder before I bring Liz on as to exactly who he is. First of all, Krebs was never actually qualified to be the head of Cisa. It's just a small department inside of DHS, but obviously could be very detrimental to the country. The disgrace, Chris Krebs is the I saw nothing, I heard nothing, I know nothing cybersecurity expert. He's obviously not smart enough, right, to be a computer expert. He was just simply Chad Wolf's, the former Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, best friend, because it was actually Chad Wolf who hired Krebs for the CISA job. He didn't even have any credentials or expertise to run CISA. None. Zero. Zilch. Nada. In fact, Krebs has a bachelor's degree in environmental sciences. And according to DHS officials in an email to me back in 2020 when I was at Newsmax, Chris Krebs was fired by President Trump then because he was in no position to comment on, quote, questions of domestic fraud, since it was, quote, beyond the scope of CISA authorities. Krebs was not qualified, according to DHS officials talking to me, to say that the 2020 election was secure. After being fired, Krebs became the face of a vast and illegal government censorship operation directed against the American citizens during the Biden regime, especially me. Where is he now? Well, Mr. Krebs is now hiding out at a group called Sentinel-1. It's really just a spook center in California. President Trump should probably freeze all government contracts and security clearances for that company too. Why did former DHS head Chad Wolf allow Chris Krebs to undermine the 2020 election on his watch? It's the question I have for him whenever I can ever get an opportunity to talk to him. Wolf even refused to fire Krebs after Trump ordered him to do so in 2020. But most alarming, Wolf's senior advisor for election security was an Obama aide, Matt Masterson. That's a story for another day. Here's what's really interesting, though. Krebs threw a 2020 election party. Guess who was invited? According to a former colleague of mine in the White House press corps, Steve Nelson, who's still at the New York Post, a document reviewed by the Post indicates it was attended by 2 staffers of none other than Dominion Voting Systems. After the election, Krebs started the Krebs and Stamos group with the notorious Alex Stamos. He was a former head of the Stanford Internet Observatory. Looks like their first customer was SolarWinds. That's a red flag since the SolarWinds hack took place while Krebs was running Cisa, and we'll go more into that tomorrow. Despite that, on a side note, Jen Easterly, the Biden-era Cisa director, gifted her predecessor with a board position in 2024. All the while, Alex Stamos and Chris Krebs spent most of their time, 2021 to 2024, trying to destroy free speech in America, which Stamos had already been doing for some time at the Stanford Internet Observatory, of which I myself was a target, and at Facebook. Before that, where according to court documents, he was the point person for the FBI to put in their censorship requests. Now, with that backgrounder, let's bring on the great Liz Harrington. She's a former spokeswoman for President Donald J. Trump, and she's a tireless advocate for securing our elections and getting rid of these machines. Liz, I couldn't be happier with the last 2 days. How do you feel?
I love your background and introduction. I didn't even realize this was going on. I wasn't paying attention the past couple of days, and now that I know what has unfolded, because I totally missed the Krebs news yesterday afternoon. This is huge and so amazing. I honestly can't even believe it's happening, but it is, because you're so used to, people saying they're going to do things and you expect something to happen and then nothing really happens. Oh no, President Trump means business. And to see what Tulsi Gabbard just said in that cabinet meeting, I think that is huge. To see the Chris Krebs announcement and the text of the actual order, which explicitly notes that the 2020 election was rigged and stolen, calls him out for lying about that fact, and specifically notes that the machines are part of it, that are vulnerable. So this is huge. President Trump is not taking no for an answer anymore. He's so determined, I think, to get fair elections in this country. He cares about this country. He's so determined to turn it all around. You can't turn it around if we have these machines. You can't turn it around if you don't have a free and fair vote. So this is amazing news, and I'm sure you're so pleased as well, Emerald.
I am, because it also indicates to me that the ball is rolling forward, that Donald Trump is actually making sure this gets done, and sooner rather than later, because of course, the midterms hinges on this, right? Cleaning this up. His ability to implement his agenda depends on cleaning this up, and really his legacy depends on cleaning this up. I know that Tulsi Gabbard and her team were briefed recently, won't give exactly when, on some evidence that is very damning for the voting machines, and I was told that her and her team were blown away. And I feel like you could see that, you could sense that in what she said in the cabinet meeting there, Liz.
Right. And this is exactly what I've been hoping and praying for, that all you need to do is just expose how corrupt this is. It's just one area. I mean, the machines is a huge part of it. Just put it out there, and then you have a mandate to get the change that the American people want, that the American people vote for, that they absolutely need. This is huge. So if she's going to go public with all of this, and the American people can see for themselves just how disgusting and vulnerable, and how these machines and how our elections have been subverted, and they can see it for themselves, I mean, that will be a huge game changer, and it has to come out. It has to be public. Like so many other things that they're discussing, exposing this government corruption is a huge priority, and that's how you get real change. And the amazing thing too, Emerald, when you're talking about that background with Krebs and to where we are now, think about where we could have been. I mean, with these people running things, it would be over. And now we have, by the grace of God, a real chance to get real elections in this country. I mean, you just couldn't be happier. Keep pushing forward. Do it, Tulsi. Go public. This is amazing stuff that the people need to know and need to see for themselves.
And there needs to be accountability. And so when we're talking about an investigation by the Department of Justice, there is potential there for indictments. I believe, based on Krebs inviting the Dominion employees to his party and statements he made prior to the election, and I know you're sharing some of that on your X feed at Real Liz USA. He was very critical of President Trump. He sat in on conferences where they called Trump authoritarian, and he took part in those. And that was prior to the 2020 election, right? He'd even said that the 2016 election was stolen by the Russians. He should never been in that position in the first place. He clearly if he knew that these machines were vulnerable to be hacking, and we do, I think there has to be some kind of accountability, because he was in that position to make sure things like that didn't happen. Liz, I hope we actually see arrest as well, because if there's not actual arrests, we can clean things up, but they'll be emboldened to try again.
Right. I mean, you have to have people pay for breaking the law and for lying and subverting. I mean, what could be worse than subverting the American people and installing, and he literally said this, that he felt the job wasn't done until January 20th, 2021, when Biden was illegitimately installed. So he viewed it, him and who else, because he said, we did it. They viewed it as their mission that they had to do. 2016 was a wake-up call. If they truly believed that Russia stole the election and it was disinformation and hacking and this and that, well, look what you did in 2020. You became the disinformation. You're the one censoring true information of how our elections were fraudulent. You did everything you claimed to be against what Russia so-called did, when we know that was all a hoax anyway. But they became that. And there has to be a real price to pay, as President Trump said yesterday when he signed this. And I want to know, this is why an investigation is so important. How did this even happen? Who told you to put out a statement on that date that this was the most secure election, not just, in a decade and, so many years, no, in history? That was the most propaganda press statement probably in our history to ever put out in official channels. It was for a specific purpose. And it literally, in the statement, they said it's the most secure election, but the recounts haven't even been finished yet. So trust us, it was so secure, but we're checking to make sure all the numbers match. Give me a break. They knew it was fraudulent. They were protecting those fraudulent results. That's what they meant when they called it Protect 2020, which Cisa and the elections group with their consultants, all these people working together, planned and coordinated well before November 3rd. So that's what they need to investigate, this coordination. They were working a very long time on the censorship aspect and then protecting the fraudulent results, which they were predetermined outcome that they knew was going to happen, and they wanted to protect it at all costs. So that's what the investigation needs to show and determine and hold those people accountable, because there's nothing worse than stealing an election. President Trump talks about it all the time. He goes through, you wouldn't have the 13 dead in Afghanistan and all the others wounded. You wouldn't have all this mayhem and destruction of our country. There needs to be accountability, like you said, Emerald. They'll be emboldened and they'll try to do it again.
I'm glad you brought up that statement. and I think an investigation will clarify this, but from what I understand from talking to a former Cisa employee, who was actually, I thought, generous to Chris Krebs, having worked with him, I guess they feel a little bit of, like they know him, right? It was crafted, that statement was crafted by Dominion and a couple of other companies with a vested interest in saying that. He signed off on it, but that was essentially the voting machine company said they were the most secure election in history. Liz Harrington, thank you so much. Let's have you back in a couple days as more of this develops, and I have more reporting that I'll be adding in. I'd love to have you join us again very soon. Thanks for jumping on with us today. And a lot of this is due to your work as well, Liz. You work closely with the president. You make sure he knows about all of these reports. I know you still flag the information for him and probably still give him information. So thank you, Liz, for your efforts. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much, Emerald.
All right, that's it for this half hour tonight at 8 p.m. Of course, I'm always back at 8 p.m. We'll dive deeper into some of these topics, as well as the president's cabinet meeting and what he had to say about tariffs. The focus is now on China. We'll have an expert on that, Colonel John Mills, to tell you what China is trying to do in retaliation, how that'll work, and the Trump's counter plan to counter that. That's at 8 p.m. We'll see you then. Thanks for sticking with me this half hour. Vanessa Broussard is next.